Yo, what's going on, E7 fam? Pat here, back with another how to play video, and in this one we're going to be revisiting the ReZero collab characters. It's been about 2 years since Emilia, Rem, and Ram made their way to Orbis and joined the Epic 7 roster, and it's been about a year, if not longer, since I did a how to play video talking about these characters. So in this video, I'm going to talk about, is it still worth it to roll for these characters? Are they still kind of good? What about their artifacts? And I will give you some builds for how they are played nowadays in the year of 2023. With the intro out of the way, let's waste no time and start talking about Emilia first. So let's start talking about the ReZero characters with the girl that is certainly not Megumin, Emilia. Emilia is right now a really strong character in my opinion. She's just not as strong as she was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, she was arguably the best character in the game, and by default, pretty much the best Soul Weaver as well. The problem is, in the last 2 years, with all of the newer characters that have come out that are supports, many of them have replaced Emilia in certain aspects, or can put up comparable performance. So she's strong, but she kind of has trouble differentiating herself from a lot of the other characters you could choose. If you want to play very aggressively with a support, Ahmed usually does Emilia's job quite a bit better. And if you're looking for a strong cleanser, characters like Destina, Designer Lilibet, Mediator Queric, Shuna, and now we also have Infinite Horizon Acades to add to that list. Those all do a comparable or better job of cleansing than Emilia does. The thing is, though, Emilia is just incredibly well-rounded. She can kind of do all of those things. She is an excellent general-purpose Soul Weaver, in my opinion, and she's worth your bookmarks if you don't have access to most of the cleansers that I talked to, or you don't have access to a character like Ahmed. This character is also incredibly good still in PvE. She's great in Labyrinth. She's amazing in Advent. She's commonly used as one of the best finishers in Team 3s for Advent. So if you're looking for somebody for Advent, definitely works there. She's also still really good in Abyss. You can use her in a lot of team compositions to climb. And I believe also some challenge Abyss floors. She's pretty decent too. Her banner is pretty good not only for Emilia herself, but for her artifact, which is Guardian Ice Crystals, which I'll bring up here real fast for you. This thing is actually nuts. You can see I have 2 copies of it. It is basically a different version of Water's Origin, but it is one of the best general use Soul Weaver artifacts in the entire game. It gives you 15 gear score worth of stats in terms of the effect resistance that it gives you, and it gives you a safety net on all of your characters with its activated, or I should say passive ability here, where you get extra health recovered when somebody goes low on health. It's just great at saving certain characters, and again, it does give you a fair amount of stats. It can save the Soul Weaver, it can save other people's on your team. As you see, I have 2 split here. It is definitely worth having multiple copies of this artifact. That's why I haven't actually maxed it out. But it is definitely one of those artifacts that is worth your time. It is arguably overall one of the best, if not the best, Soul Weaver artifact in the game. There are definitely other Soul Weaver artifacts you can play, like your Unfading Memories, like your Soul Consolations and stuff, but Ice Crystals, since it's come out, has proven to be one of the most consistent and useful Soul Weaver artifacts in the entire game. As far as build paths for this character, let's talk about, or at least revisit, my old speed build on Emilia. This still kind of works. It hasn't really changed since the last time you have seen it. It's just that the game is a bit faster now than it was 2 years ago, so you might need to jump the speed stat that's on this thing. As you can see, I'm on speed resist, and the offsets can be health or defense if you're looking for specific stats. Looking at the desired stats, the things that matter: defense over 1400, HP over 15k. Nowadays, 15-15 or like 15-16k is a better split. That's more ideal for Emilia. For speed, anything I think over like 270 would be really high end for Emilia. This character is dirt slow, by the way, at 103 base speed. So don't feel too bad about not being able to get Emilia that fast. In the past, I've played Emilia at like 240 or 250 most of the time, which is obviously slower than what you see here. It's really hard to get the 260 plus speed. That's like 17 per piece average speed. And if you want to go for like 270, you're looking at like 20 speed per piece average. So again, that's a higher end build, but for the most part, this still works. You can see my effect resistance is 103%, which is Emilia's base ER with the resist set factored in with a 65% effect resistance ring. If you can go higher than this, I recommend you do so. Like the low end for Emilia nowadays is like 150, even on like a speed build, so that she has some chance to actually cleanse if you get into a pickle. But yeah, that's it pretty much for this first side. If you want to see the right side on it, it's going to be HP percentage necklace, ER ring, speed boots. Artifact is that Guardian Ice Crystal that we talked about because it's really just that amazing. And then you can see the per piece average at 11% defense, 10% HP, 17 speed, as I said previously, and then some flat HP or defense. The other build that I want to talk about is the one that I think most people will have more success with, which is an update to my old general use cleanser build here. It is going to be on speed resist as the primary sets with health or defense as the offsets. Looking at the desired stats, you could see that my defense and health spread are exactly like I talked about before. 1500 defense, 16k HP. Speed is still 230 like it was last time. I wanted to bump this up to 240, but again, I try to make the floor on these builds a bit lower so it's more accessible to most of you watching this video. But realistically, you'd probably want like 240, 250 if you can get it with these same stat lines for Emilia. A lot of Soul Weavers in the format fall into a couple of camps. They're all either around 200 speed with like your Maid Chloe's, maybe your Destinos. 250 is where most of the cleansers fall, like your DJBs, your Inoses, your Emilias. They might go a little bit faster at 260. And then you have the really fast Soul Weavers like your Amids, which are just as fast as we could possibly get them. 270, 280, 290, 300, for example, are the ranges for like those kinds of things. The big change here for general use cleanser, 200 ER is what we have here. My old build was 150. You really want 200 nowadays. Debuffs are just everywhere, and even like intermediate players on ladder can muster up like 130 to 150 effectiveness for the most part. So 150 really doesn't cut it anymore. You really don't want your cleanser to get debuff. 200 is probably the floor nowadays with how potent debuffers are. And if you can go higher than this, by all means, go for it. 220 would be nice. 250 plus would be insane. But that's probably going to require something like Bastion of Hope. Take a look at the right side gear. Health percentage necklace, ER ring. Feel free to go for health if you decide to not chase as high ER. If you wanted to go with that 150 like we talked about for some reason, that's all up to you. Boots or speed as always. Artifact, still Guardian Ice Crystals, but almost anything that you want to play on Emilia will work here. Bastion of Hope will work here. Unfading Memories will work here. Magaraha's Tome will work here. Rod of Amaryllis will work here. All of these work. I have played all of them on Emilia. They all function incredibly well. It just depends on what you want out of the character, how you decide to play her, what you're playing her with, what scenario she is in. I have really liked Unfading Memories on this character in the past, and I've also really liked Rod of Amaryllis, but Guardian Ice Crystals is the one that I think is the most well-rounded, the one with the best amount of like use cases. Looking at the per piece average, it's 14% health, 14% defense, 12 speed, and 19% ER. I recognize that the quality of this build is a little bit higher, by the way, than most of the other builds that you see here on how to play. But again, times have changed, and Emilia really needs to have quality gear, I feel like, to compete at PvP in this day and age. If you don't want to play her in PvP and you just are only going to use her for PvE applications, feel free to drop a lot of my stats, including the ER. You can kind of tank my ER. You don't really need that much for PvE. Now let's talk about my favorite character from ReZero, which is Rem. Rem was probably the best DPS in the game when she came out 2 years ago. Back then, the only real counters we had to this character were like Violet and Greenlandy. Nowadays, most DPS in the game can easily pick her off. Things like Spectre does extremely well against her. Reamer Tempest, extremely well against her. Even a newer character like Lethe, extremely well against this character. She simply just doesn't have the same level of impact that she did 2 years ago. And to make matters worse, a character like Shu, who was buffed along the way, kind of does her niche quite a bit better. Shu's harder to stop. Shu does more damage. Shu is tankier. Shu can carry, I feel like, from positions that Rem shouldn't be able to. So again, Shu's basically like the same character, but quite a bit better. Right now, For PvP, Rem's best uses are as a niche last pick against heavy AoE comps, or as a Hail Mary play against a Jacko cleave. Basically, if you're playing against Jacko, you can take Rem, and if they don't focus Rem, well, then you might get lucky and get a bunch of counters and win the game that way. Alternatively, if they focus the Rem, she's blue versus red, which is what Jacko is. So you have a 50-50 chance that Forever Elysian Driver actually misses, and then you survive the cleave and stabilize from there. Most of you watching this video, though, who might potentially want to roll for Rem, are probably going to be doing so because she's an excellent character for Wyvern hunts, whether that is for general use farming, or if you decide to build a one-shot composition around her. I think between the two ReZero banners, as much as it pains me to say it, because Rem's my favorite character, Emilia is the significantly better choice. Azure Comet, which is the artifact on Rem's banner, used to be pretty good on characters like Designer Lilibet and Straze. But lately, we've gotten some powerhouse releases like Golden Rose, as well as Benimaru's Tachi. And then you have characters, or I should say artifacts, like Merciless Glutton, that were changed some time back. So yeah, this thing is competing with a lot right now, and as such, it doesn't get a whole lot of use anymore. Still, if you're looking to pick up a fun unit to try in Guild Wars Arena, or you just need, again, a general use Wyvern farmer, Rem could be worth a pickup. Let's take a look at the Wyvern set first, as this is probably the one that most of you watching this video are trying to build her for. It's not too much different than the Wyvern build from How to Play Rem originally. If we look at the primary sets, they're still the same on Rage Crit. For offsets, I have Penetration listed here, although that is a little bit misleading. Essentially, you need the S3 to deal a decent chunk of damage, which Penetration doesn't help for on the first wave for Wyvern. So you're not going to get too much of a benefit from it. Still, if you don't need the critical hit chance from the crit set, Penetration is still technically a better option. You can see here I have a note. Pairs well with Seaside Bologna, Sinful Angelica, and some kind of defense breaker, such as the 3-star Camilla. That's the kind of composition that you're going to be building along with Rem for one-shots. If you're looking for a one-shot, that's kind of the team you're going to be playing. Otherwise, you can just try to, use this character in place of Sigret in most other Wyvern builds. That's pretty much where she goes. She is a substitute for Sigret most of the time. Looking at her desired stats, 4,600 attack, base defense, and health. Speed, I have 102 to 132. Originally, when I made this video, How to Play Rem, I had 102 speed as the speed threshold for Wyvern. Certain builds, like a one-shot, she might actually need to be a little bit faster, like in the 130 to 135 range, which is why I kind of slid the speed up to 132. Ideally, 130 or so is kind of really where you want to be on the character. Base speed doesn't work with every single composition, but like 130 or so kind of works a bit better on most compositions, which is why I made that change. Critical hit chance is 85%, because remember, we get 15% from fighting the Wyvern. Critical hit damage is 310%. Excuse me. Taking a look at the right side here, we have critical hit damage necklace, attack percentage ring, attack percentage boots, and then, of course, the artifact is Daydream Joker, because it does the most amount of damage to the Wyvern. Taking a look at the per piece average here, you can see I have attack percentage and flat attack, because the per piece average is 30% on the attack. So you're going to need to split that up however you can. 10% critical hit chance, unless of course you have imprints, and then critical hit damage is going to be 18% per piece average. Now, for those of you who want to YOLO play Rem in PvP, here is a updated version of the PvP build for when I made How to Play Rem just about a year and something ago. For the primary sets, we're on counter immunity, because it is kind of important for us to not get debuffed at the start, because we kind of expect in 2023 that our opponents are smart enough to just hard focus Rem right at the start of the fight and not actually hit anyone else, because they don't want to trigger your S2 passive. Offsets could be critical hit chance, health, or defense if you so choose. Taking a look at our desired stats, you'll notice that it is a bit different than How to Play Rem. Our damage overall is lower at 3,000 attack and 250 critical hit damage, but our defense is quite a bit higher at 1,400 and our health at 21k. This is a lot higher than when we made How to Play Rem. In 2023, if you are expecting to try to actually use Rem in PvP, she better be basically a brick house. You want to make sure that this character survives. She needs to basically be where you'd expect a low-end shoe to arrive in terms of bulk. You really, really need this character to be as bulky as possible. She needs to draw a bunch of fire and last for as long as possible so you get some value out of her. Hopefully stabilize so she gets to her first turn and heal up a little bit off of Sigurd's Scythe until hopefully you can pick off an enemy and then actually activate the demon mode on this character. I think if you're not willing to invest as hard as possible in defense and health in 2023, it's not worth building this character for PvP. Taking a look at the right side gear here, I'm on a crit damage necklace, but you could play crit chance or even HP percentage if you want to just go as bulky as possible. You'll notice the ring and boots here are going to be both HP percentage. This is a huge departure from how to play Rem, where it was 1 HP, 1 attack. Damage is nice, but my stance in 2023 for a lot of these slower bruisers is just survive, get some value out of the character, even if it's not max value. This is my philosophy for how I play Illinam, and it has worked out fantastically for me so far. And that's why you see that my Rem is quite a bit tankier than she was in the past. Artifact, Sigurd Scythe is probably going to be universally what you play on PvP on her 99.9% of the time. But if you don't have a Sigurd Scythe laying around, you just, you're desperately in need of them because almost every warrior, it feels like, needs this thing. Golden Rose can be a suitable substitute for you. Taking a look at the per piece average, it is 16% attack, 15% defense, 11% HP, and 14% critical hit chance, assuming you have no imprints on the character. Lastly, let's talk about the other twin maid in Ram. I think Ram, personally, is the winner of the ReZero collab in 2023, which may be surprising to some of you as she is the free unit and not one of the gacha units. Ram is excellent as a Banshee farmer for newer players, and there's also a lot of one-shot compositions you can build around her. They're just not as consistent as some of the ones you'd get with characters like Baiken or Straze. Rem in 2023 feels pretty low tier in PvP, and Emilia doesn't really feel like she stands out too much compared to most of the modern Soul Weavers we have. That said, in my opinion, Ram feels like she stands pretty tall, at least in her niche. She's probably the best Hopeless Samaquis Expedition DPS in the game, at least as far as I'm aware, and she's really solid in a lot of PvE game modes like Advent, Abyss, and you can also use her in Hall of Trials. She's also fairly straightforward and easy to build. All you really need is some rage gear and hopefully some penetration gear laying around, and you're pretty much good to go. Looking at the primary sets for an Expedition and or Banshee build for Ram, I am on a rage set with a penetration offset. This is to lower the values of the attack and critical hit damage needed. If you decide to go for critical hit chance as the offset, just know that your attack and critical hit damage will need to be slightly higher, probably like 10% higher on both of them in order for them to actually kind of do the job. Maybe 5% is probably closer to it mathematically, but yeah. You can see here I have the passive modifier. This is largely for my own calculations to make sure that I have enough damage to actually kill the Banshee and perform fairly consistently on something like, say, Hopeless Samaquis. Looking at the desired stats, I have 4,155 attack. When you factor in Ram's passive, this should read as 5,400 attack. So we are computing the math at 4,155, but in-game it will display as 5,400. If you are wondering, well, that's why we have that number. We're really looking for Ram to display 5,400 attack inside of the game. Defense is 1,100 and health is 8k. This is so that way you can kind of survive like 1 or 2 AoE hits from the Hopeless Samaquis Expedition if you decide to play her there. For speed, I have 130 to 160. If you're only playing her for Banshee, 130 is fine. You probably want to be closer to around 150 or so if you are trying to play her for Hopeless Samaquis as well. There's probably a sweet spot in there around like 140 or like 143, 144 or something, where it works really well for both. That depends entirely on your speed tuning for Banshee for you to be able to use Ram in both Banshee and Expedition. There's a range here. You're going to have to tune it yourself and figure out what is the best value for you. Critical hit chance here is going to be 85% because Ram is going to be an earth-based character, largely fighting blue characters, so you don't need 100% critical hit chance. Critical hit damage here is 300%, excuse me. Again, just trying to get as much damage as possible. And then effectiveness is 57%. This is Ram's base value with a triple S imprint, which you get for free from just doing the collab, so that is why it is at 57%. Taking a look at the right side gear, I want a critical hit damage necklace, an attack percentage ring, and the boots are attack percentage because we just need this character to hit as hard as possible in the spots that we're actually choosing her. For the artifact, Collab gives you the most amount of damage, and it just happens to be free to play friendly at 4-star rarity, so that's definitely a major boon for this character. It's one of the reasons, again, why I think this character is the winner of the patch. Fairly easy to build, fairly straightforward to build, super accessible for anyone, and has great use cases. The alternative would be Daydream Joker for something like Banshee. Doesn't really work on Hopeless Samaquis. That's why I like Collab. Collab, as far as I'm aware, also outdamages Daydream Joker on Banshee. If I'm wrong, you can let me know down in the comments below, but I believe Collab gives you a massive damage bonus over Daydream Joker at the higher attack and critical hit damage thresholds. Looking at the per piece average, we have 18% per piece attack as well as some flat attack if you can get it. Remember, this number is going to be a lot higher if you actually need to use critical hit chance as the offset. 14% critical hit chance and then 16% critical hit damage. Last thing I want to talk about is just some quick builds for you guys, some team compositions for Banshee and Expedition. If we take a look at the one-shot composition for Banshee, if you decide to play it, you can play Vivian on something like Dignisorb or Daydream Joker as her artifact with the EE that gives her 50% CR. You can also play Leo with a Song of Stars artifact. That's pretty much mandatory, I feel like, in order for Ram to actually do the job to one-shot. And then, obviously, he's got the defense break on the S2. You just need to Mullagora that up. And then you just have Ram there at that point. And pretty much the way that the entire thing should play out is it should be Leo with the S3 to stun, Vivian with the S3 for the attack buff, Vivian lapping your Ram and pressing S2, killing the first wave. Then we go into the next wave. Leo gives target and defense break off the S2, Vivian S1s, and then Ram S3s, and boom, instantly dead Banshee. That's pretty much how that plays out. And then lastly, we just have a very free-to-play Hopeless Samaquis team that is fairly good. Rowana in the front, just make sure she is tanky enough so that she doesn't die. You can play whatever you want on her for artifacts and things, just as long as she's bulky and doesn't die, you're pretty good. Then you just play Helga for your defense break with some amount of damage. Ruse it as fast as you can get him on RNL, ideally, but whatever other artifact is fine. And just try to have him take as many turns as possible to trigger the counterattack so that way Rowana can heal you and push up your team. And then just Ram is there for damage because she can't actually be pushed back by Hopeless Samaquis, so she's more consistent than something like, say, Baiken. And that's pretty much it for how you're using Ram. Hopefully that is super helpful. And that's pretty much it for these characters. Hopefully you've enjoyed this revisit of the ReZero collab characters. I think they generally have aged significantly better than most of the Guilty Gear characters. Again, they are worth rolling for. They have some difficulties. They're not the best characters like they were, like I said, 2 years ago. Emilia's artifact in particular is still worth rolling for, and I highly recommend everybody watching pick up at least one copy. It's, again, one of the strongest general use Soul Weaver artifacts in the entire game. If you enjoyed this and you think it will also help somebody out, feel free to share out the video. And if you want to see more how to play videos, there should be a playlist on your screen now. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye now.